The FNAF movie got a ton of updates with new crazy animatronic reveals and even more info about the movie plot. Like the video if you're hyped, and as a reward, here's my silly looking dog. So for starters, we got a few casting updates worth mentioning. First off, the actor Michael P. Sullivan posted a while ago confirming that he was going to be inside of the movie in some way, which is very interesting. And following the news, somebody actually asked him what he was going to be doing in the film, saying, "What role will you be playing? I'm a big fan of the franchise," with him responding, "My character was created for the movie and does not appear in any place in the franchise." So essentially, this tells us that similar to a lot of people in the movie thus far, this character is going to be somebody completely new. This also confirms to us that there's going to be multiple characters in the film that are entirely created for the sake of the movie, which was probably to be expected, but at least we could stop scrambling to try and find random references to names in the film. There's going to be new characters completely, which in my opinion is a great thing if done correctly. And speaking of new characters, we also found out that actress Bailey Winston was casted for the movie under the name Kim, who once again is somebody we never see in FNAF, suggesting they are probably going to be somebody new in some way. Also, in some sadder news, they finally ended up tearing down the pizzeria location that we've been seeing photos of for a while now. Now, this most likely means they're just done with the outside portion of filming and simply just don't need it, but it is really interesting that there's still a month left of filming and they already decided to tear the place down. I hope they don't end up needing it again in the future. Now, moving on to the big and important news. Basically, if you didn't already know, because I'm kind of late to it at this point, a few days ago, somebody posted on Instagram of them touring Jim Henson's Creature Shop, the company that is responsible for creating the FNAF movie props and animatronics, with them showing off random dead mouse masks and other cool stuff, with the most notable one being none other than this image, giving us an incredibly close-up shot of two heads of what we can only assume is Springtrap being tested for the eventual use in the movie. Now, this was an absolute shocker to hear. For starters, breaking this photo down, this appears to definitely be the character Springtrap. However, it looks like a somewhat younger version than the ones we see in, say, Five Nights at Freddy's 3, where he is much more decayed. Although this doesn't appear to be pre-Afton Spring Bonnie or anything like that, this is definitely after William Afton was locked into the suit, based on the overall burn marks and the decay of the ear, among many other things. So that's cool and all, but this then brings up a massive question. Why the heck is Springtrap in the movie? See, for a while now, the biggest question for the FNAF movie has been, what is it going to be about and what is the script going to be? And in my last video, I actually theorized that the movie is most likely going to be about the character Mike and take place in the original Five Nights at Freddy's timeline and setting, which made a lot of sense at the time. The old-timey style of the restaurant, the inclusion of Mike and other character designs from around FNAF 1, not to mention Scott himself saying in an interview a few years back that he wanted to make 3 separate movies on the first, second, and third game before literally signing the actor of William Afton to 2 more movies after this first one releases. But with this reveal, all this evidence and these theories I just made seem to be entirely flipped on its head, because now Springtrap of all people is showing up in the film to at least some extent, which leaves a massive hole in my theory, since FNAF 3 was meant to be all about Springtrap in an entirely separate location, but here he is being showcased for what we can only assume is the first of multiple movies in the franchise. And I have a theory for what all this could mean, but before doing so, let's look at the technical parts of these masks. For starters, like what we saw in the Freddy suit leak from before, this appears to be just what looks like a mask, as in something an actor of some sorts is going to wear to play the character rather than it actually being a real standalone animatronic, like what some of us may have been hoping for. Which honestly feels really weird, because while you could argue having a suit for Springtrap works fine because there's literally a human inside of him, it'd be really hard for the others to match the movements of the animatronic figures with some random dude wearing a fursuit, but I digress. The thing that really sticks out to me technically the most about this animatronic, however, is the fact that there is 2 of them. 2 almost identical, clearly complete ones, might I add, that both look in almost perfect condition and were showed off on this tour as such. But why 2 Springtrap heads? Well, you could label it as just them making extra ones so nothing goes wrong during filming, so they just made a backup, and to that I say you're probably right. However, I feel like you could definitely argue that the second head has some sort of purpose. No, not that there's 2 Springtraps or anything, but rather if they are making a replacement head of Springtrap of all things, what could happen to him that could lead to his animatronic suit breaking? Well, if you ask me, especially after seeing the clear action scenes being shot for the movie in the past, I'm wondering if Springtrap is going to have some form of action and violence thrown into the scene as well. Perhaps maybe they'll even recreate him first coming going into the suit and they need a spare in case the water and whatnot from the scene ruins the fragile animatronics. Maybe he will in some way come after Mike or some of the other characters and involve potential fight scenes with the animatronics. I mean, I'm just spitballing ideas here. However, it seems to make sense that this second head is at least for something. Like, I can't see them sinking their entire budget into making full-blown animatronics for the movie and then sinking their entire budget again to make replacements for everything in case everything goes wrong. It just doesn't feel very ethical. So in my opinion, I think that the second suit has to be for something in particular. They aren't for different scenes and time frames or anything since they share the exact same features, but I wouldn't be surprised if Springtrap has his own cinematic appearance of some sorts. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But moving back into movie predictions, I'm still very confused. Why in the world does Springtrap show up at all in a movie clearly based on Five Nights at Freddy's 1? Well, this is a question that can actually be applied to more of the cast than just Springtrap. Something people don't talk about much is that Vanessa is also literally casted for the film, being played by Elizabeth Lale. Presumably the same Vanessa from Security Breach, which is basically as far as it gets from the original FNAF. So this timeline of the movie is absolutely all over the place, but I have a theory about the film and its plot that I think is most likely correct, at least to some extent. So like we said, it's awfully confusing to have Vanessa from Security Breach and Springtrap from FNAF 3 in a movie seemingly about FNAF 1. But the thing is, while the FNAF movie is going to be taking place in the FNAF 1 location, the movie plot itself isn't actually about FNAF 1 and its restaurant from the past, but rather is about what FNAF 1 was in the present. And here's what I mean. See, as I touched upon in my last video, we know that there's a lot of things that seem to suggest that the movie is going to be taking place after the closing of FNAF 1. The abandoned, fallen down sign, the old vines all over the restaurant, among a lot of other things. But what's interesting is that since that video, people have actually gone up to the front of the pizza place itself, which by the way, I do not recommend. But upon further inspection up close, we could see that once again, there is a ton of intentional damage done to the sign and dirt to represent aging with the location as if it were abandoned for years. And so this film isn't going to be about the tragedies of FNAF 1 and what happened, but rather I think it's going to be about what happened after. It's the reason why there's so much intentional aging put onto the location, and it's the only real explanation on how the characters who otherwise wouldn't fit in the plot could coexist in a movie about the original location, at least in theory. In fact, while I think this movie of course will feature a lot of horror elements, because how could it not, I actually think it's probably going to be more focused on mystery. The characters seem like they're probably going to be investigating the location after seeing police all around the area to see what had happened to this seemingly friendly place, to turn it into a full-blown crime scene with literal murders. In fact, to extend on this idea even more, there's actually plenty of sightings of the crew filming the movie with all the lights on as if the location were somehow open, leading me to believe that all of these sightings where the pizza place looks like it's open, in my opinion, are nothing more than flashbacks and are going to happen before the actual film's plot takes place. It would also explain some other minor confusions in the film as well. Like, for example, why in the world did they cast a bunch of people as ghost children or children who died presumably in the pizza place if they were literally already dead? You don't really need to cast full-blown characters for people who are already dead, unless those people were going to show up in a flashback of some sorts to show what happened before the movie's plot actually happened, and are potentially meant to build character and personality in the children to build a motive as for why Mike wanted to investigate the place after it was already closed. It would also give the movie plenty of room for the 2 sequels that need to happen, with the options of prequels explaining what happened before and sequels that show what happened after. It makes a lot of sense, at least in my opinion. I'd probably say the biggest hole in this abandoned building theory is that while it makes sense under this assumption for Springtrap to show up on the film for what it is, the actual actor for human William Afton is, like we said, signed to 3 separate movies. Yet we literally see his mangled, rotten version being built for the original film itself as an animatronic, so I don't really understand why in the world they would sign him for multiple movies if he's going to become Springtrap at some point in the first film. It seems like there's either one, going to be some sort of rewriting of the timeline for this movie, which, trust me, is not something particularly uncommon, or 2, it could jump around the timeline of the entire series a lot. I've already, I think, probably solved that there's going to be multiple different flashbacks for the film. There's the abandoned version of the pizza place where the movie is probably going to take place sometime in the past when the pizzeria was still open, and also there seems to be a 3rd flashback to when Mike was a child as well, since Jessica Blackmore, the lady casted as Mike's mother is playing as his mother in her 30s, which is weird since Mike's actor Josh Hutcherson is also in his 30s. So that also seems to at least suggest there's probably going to be another flashback to Mike's youth. I'm not exactly sure, and I don't want to say too much because I'm not nearly as invested in the lore as I was when the games first came out. But regardless, this was a massive reveal. Let me know if I'm stretching in the comments below. Subscribe and peace.